I wish Assassin's Creed Shadows was Hannah Montana the game, which is probably a statement that leaves you a bit perplexed. Anyway, stick around to learn about the giveaway I'm doing, where I'm going to give away a copy of the game at launch. Let's begin with the combat, and if I butcher any of the pronouncing here, I'm gonna do my best. I think Naoe's combat is a lot of fun. She's very fast, but doesn't have a lot of health, so you constantly feel like you're on your toes. She had the katana, which is a bit of a medium range weapon. You had the tanto, which is more of a very short range, and then the kusarigama, which is both up close and personal and a long range around your enemies. I personally mained the kusarigama. I had a blast with it, and I think it was the most useful throughout most of the game. Naoe also has some tools at her disposal. The kunai, when thrown, has some power, but are thrown a little slower. Smoke bombs to confuse enemies and conceal yourself. Shuriken are less powerful than the kunai, but are thrown much faster. And then you have the bell, which can distract enemies. I didn't find myself using the bell very much, but I certainly had a mix of the other three throughout my playthrough. I'll go ahead and squeeze in the parkour and the grappling hook here. Both are a lot of fun to use. Both are very useful. And honestly, it might be the best parkour in the entire series.
That's high praise.
On the other hand, Yasuke is a tank. A lot of health, very powerful. He also has 3 weapons. The long katana, which is, I suppose you could say, short range in a sense. The naginata, which is more medium range. And the kanabo, God, I hope I'm saying that right, which is just a thumper. Just a big old weapon, baby. Dropping the hammer. Yet despite their differences, they all felt kind of samey to me. So I really just went with the weapon that was up to level with the character. He's also got the bow and the gun, which are both fine to use, I suppose. Obviously, gun more powerful, but has a long reload. Bow less powerful, fast reload. And his tools really only consist of different types of arrows and different types of bullets. And honestly, I never used any of them. And to interject with the parkour once again, as most of you know, when it comes to the big guy, can't really parkour, which makes sense. He'll climb very slowly, can't obviously reach places that require a grappling hook, and comically will break rope if you try to cross it, which I do love a lot. Honestly, I'm gonna say it, I don't like playing as Yasuke, which I know what you're all gonna say.
Can I just say before we just like take two? I love, you're so brave. I just love how brave you're being.
Because no other YouTuber has that opinion right now. And it has nothing to do with Yasuke as a character. We'll get into that. It just feels a lot easier. Like too much easier-ish. Too easy. It's too easy to play as him compared to the other character. And it makes sense that at first glance, he should be a bit easier, right? He's a tank. But I think they drastically overdid it because it feels too easy and it just makes it not fun to play as him. And I think this stinks because if you decide to play as one of the characters over the other for the majority of the time, you, outside of mission rewards, which you can see before you do the mission, you only get weapon and armor as the character you're actively playing as, in regard to loot chests you find along the way. Meaning, unless you have the gold to spend with merchants, this makes you vastly under-leveled as the other character very quickly. And maybe I'm crazy, but it felt like to me, I was getting more loot with story missions with Naoe more so than Yasuke. And keep in mind, with these story missions, it didn't matter who you played as. The reward would be the same no matter what. So it felt pretty unbalanced in that regard, which is not a good thing if you don't want to play as the guy. So here's our first example of where I wish it was. And just have it be balanced. I shouldn't have to worry about one character constantly being under-leveled, sometimes drastically, just because I don't want to play as them. Now, I'm not somebody that thinks he shouldn't be in the game at all. I think maybe it just would have made more sense to have him be playable for a certain amount of missions. And in fairness, you could have just given the bow and the gun to Naoe instead. There are other shinobi in the game that for sure use that gun. And a smaller bow for her could have been given via one of the multiple Portuguese homies you meet. Perhaps this would have made less sense historically, but in a world of assassin blades, I think it would have been okay. Now, this would have made the combat the best of both worlds and would have made it a different and overall better game. So you thought I was going to play the song again, but I can't do that to you. I refuse to get the song stuck in your head. Just editing it in a minute ago took like 4 times, so now it's stuck in my head and it's my own personal hell.
This is hell. Hello, Hitler. Hello, Mussolini. Captain Kangaroo. That's weird.
I guess somewhat of a editor's notes. I almost forgot about the boss fights. They're all pretty samesies, minus towards the end. Then you really start fleshing them out a bit. I won't show any examples because I don't want to spoil it for you. I also don't want to get in trouble on accident in case, you know, I show the wrong one. Oopsie poopsie. But they're fine. Just kind of repetitive up until a certain point. This next portion is going to flip things around a little bit. Yasuke is a pretty interesting character and his voice actor does a pretty good job, while Naoe is kind of boring and her voice actor a lot of the time is very flat. Like arguably the worst voice acting performance in the game. Well, besides this one.
It is I, the Oni. Haven't you heard? You should be careful around here.
You look like a thief to me.
And you look like you're trying to be tough. You see how deceiving looks can be?
Blah, blah, blah. Best of both worlds. Blah, blah, blah. Would have been better if both characters have been equally likable in both personality and voice acting. Part of your goal in the game is to form a ragtag team of allies to fight against the bad guys. Unfortunately, I really didn't like any of them. Some of them were fine, I guess, but pretty boring. And others I just found dreadfully annoying. I do think that you meet some people in the game that are on your side that you don't necessarily bring into your inner circle that are at least interesting. So that makes up for it a little bit. Enemy-wise, it all kind of feels the same, except towards the end. Whatever reason, like towards the end and the epilogue, the villainy, the villains get a lot better, like leagues better. And I think that kind of reflects on the story itself too. All I can say is Yasuke and Naoe have their reasons for revenge against this group of bad guys that hide their identities behind masks. And it's unfortunate because the whole entire main conflict is pretty dull. And then they sprinkle in a bit of the Brotherhood of Assassins very, very seldomly, minus towards the end in the epilogue. Then it's just like assassins, Templars, like it's just like Pandora's box opens. It gets so much better. I'll put it like this: if you could take towards the end and the epilogue and had that quality of story throughout the entire game, this easily could have been a 9 out of 10 game with some other fixes of what we talked about, right? With the combat. Okay, it would have taken a good amount, but still, like, the story kind of sucks until that point, so it just it really would have been. I lied to you and I'm very sorry. The last thing I'll say about the story is I feel like you're going to constantly correctly guess the plot twists that are going to happen before they happen. The game has romances and they all are terrible except for maybe one. Now, instead of having an ad or a sponsor for this video, I'm just going to point out a couple things real quick. First off, if you're in need of any kind of Photoshop skills for, say, thumbnails, check out my buddy Mealtime with Dad. He did the thumbnail for me because I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to Photoshop. Saved me a lot of time, and I really appreciate him. He does really, really good work. He gets my seal of approval. You can find the link to his Twitch in the description. Next, my wife makes jewelry and pottery. You can check out her Etsy and Shopify with the links in the description. She does a lot of her own original work as well as handcrafted stuff from IPs. Like right now, I know she has Pokemon and other Nintendo stuff, and she's going to keep expanding onto that. So do me a solid and go support my wife. I'd appreciate that a lot. Finally, I'm going to be giving away a copy of Assassin's Creed Shadows for the Xbox Series X. on Thursday, March 20th, which is the day the game releases. I'll be doing that live on Twitch at 7:30 p.m. Central. That's 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you want to be a part of that, the best way to do so, obviously go follow me on Twitch now, but also I'll have a link to both my Twitch and my Discord in the description, and you can always join the Discord and get notified when I go live via that. And you also get notified when I upload my YouTube stuff and whenever I do stream on Twitch. So Discord's a cool place. Anytime we do any kind of giveaway stuff, I utilize Discord. If we do contests, same thing. I gotta say, I do really like the Hideout. I'm a guy that loves simulator games, so being able to do this was fun for me. Though I will say the usefulness of buildings being built goes away decently early on. Such effects as increasing how much XP you get over time and the number of scouts you can have. We'll get into scouts soon. I think there's plenty you can do to customize the look of everything. You can have pets via either buying them or simply petting an animal you find in the world. It just would have been the best of both worlds had they increased the longevity of the usefulness of the buildings. To be able to build these buildings, you'll need materials. You can find them out in the world, do certain types of missions, or simply buy them from vendors. This is also where the usefulness of scouts comes in. When finding materials out in the world, you can tag stockpiles for your scouts to smuggle, and you'll receive the goods at the end of each season. And yes, seasons do change through the entire game, and it is not dependent on getting through portions of the story. Rather, you'll see a little timer on your map screen indicating as such.
Seasons change, time passes by, as the weeks become the months, become the years.
I really like this a lot. Back to scouts. Whenever you pick up a new mission, instead of telling you exactly where to go most of the time, you get clues on where to go via information in your map. Once you get a certain area of the map pinned down, you can use a scout to find the exact location or go find it yourself. Overall, I really like the use of the scouts. I think there's a fair amount of them as well, just enough to where you have to be careful not to overuse them, as they only refill once the next season rolls around. Now here's some quick hitters to wrap up the video with. Graphically, the game looks really nice. The game is just beautiful at times, truthfully. The different locales, the towns, the sites. The game ran very well, didn't notice any bugs, except for towards the end and the epilogue. For whatever reason, Naoe's, I guess you would say SFX, all of her actions, including her attacks, the grappling hook, climbing, all were missing. I don't know how else to put that. And it was very distracting. Hopefully that's a bug that's fixed by the time the game rolls out. As far as traversal goes, you've mainly got the horse and the boats. And of course, because of how Japan is actually very mountainous and high elevation, I found myself ditching my horse a lot of the times to try to traverse around said mountainous areas, which again, just there's a lot of them. And there's also a daunting amount of foliage when you're trying to traverse these high areas to where you can't see what you're doing most of the time, which isn't so much a complaint, just kind of funny. Because of all this high elevation, it really spreads out the amount of roads to a lesser degree than you might be expecting, which can get annoying at times, but it leads into what I think is the most fun way to traverse. Because there are enough waterways, overall, I found myself, if I needed to get somewhere I haven't been before, using the boat, which is nice because it's very pretty looking. The last thing I'm going to say before I wrap up is that, like a lot of other RPGs, you have to do side missions to get to the end of the game, progressively, no matter what, which is a bit of a slog if you dislike the side missions like I do. Nothing sticks out remotely, especially if you compare it to the side missions in, say, a Ghost of Tsushima, which I'm very proud of myself that I did not compare this game to once up until now, or even the recent Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So much of the time, these side missions, as far as exposition goes, are all not cutscenes, but rather reading. And you know I don't like to read. So I think that's the only reason why I put in almost 50 hours into the game, because I had to. Which is why if I'm missing anything, it's because I literally did this entire video in one day the day before I released the video, based on when we got the review copies of the game. It doesn't help that as I'm finishing out this portion and the closing of the video, my migraine has progressively gotten worse throughout the day, which is probably why you've noticed so many cuts in regard to my editing at this last part. I cannot articulate what I want to say, and I keep getting this heavy brain fog. So oh, it's happening again. I keep losing my train of thought and how I want to say things. So if I might be so bold, it's about to be bargain after dark, baby. The only way I'm going to finish this is if I turn off these bright lights, so forgive me. In conclusion, I feel like given the fact that there was so much I liked but didn't like, I've got to just go straight down the middle and give it a 5 out of 10, which on my scale is a perfectly average game, which, considering how long we waited for a Japan-based Assassin's Creed game, is thoroughly disappointing. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you have any questions for me for anything I didn't cover, feel free to ask and I will answer as thoroughly as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to please subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in my next review. Or I do a lot of unboxing videos too. I've also got a series where I cover movie license games, so check those out as well. Regardless, see you in the next one.